Hey, can we tell the students how much we appreciated that this morning? Please, one more time. I tell you what, I'll never apologize for the fact that this church, one of the things most highest priorities that we have here is the next generation. And we will always be that way. And I hope I hope that rings through to you. That's like, yes, that's what we've got to do. We have to be that kind of church. And so I'm excited to hear them up here. And I got to be back there watching. And I don't know if you could tell, could you even see the drummer back there? I tell you what, he is something else. What an incredible job. It's just great. That pumps me up when I see that. It excites me because today what we talk about is going to, I believe, be, I hope, one of the most powerful days we've experienced in a while. And not necessarily because of what I'm going to do or what I'm saying, but what God is going to do and what I hope God will do in your heart and your life. I don't know what your week's been like. I don't know what you're going through right now. I don't know what the experience has been. Even over these weeks as we've been talking about this journey and where you are going and where we are going. But I hope that today it's like, wow, that's it. And we hope to give you something very practical when you leave here today that will hopefully just give you something to go with and will influence you for a period of time. So I'm excited to launch into this, and I want to remind you of some things. I'm just going to launch right into because there's a lot to share today, and I want to make sure that we definitely do this and do it with the ample time. Thanks for joining us online. I sometimes jump through and don't always say that, but I am so glad you're with us because I believe today there's some practical things for you. So please stick around all the way through so that we can share those with you. I believe it's going to be great. I want to know and make sure that you're ready for this. I know a lot of you use your device for, you may use it to look up scriptures. Or you may follow along on the church app or with YouVersion with the notes and everything we do. But I want to encourage you to have it right available and turn it on silent, and then just have it there close by. All right, so that you're going to need it as we go through this morning. I want to remind you that faith is a journey. Faith has been a journey. It's totally something that when we think of taking a road trip or whatever, you think of all the things that may be an issue with taking a road trip, things that you've done, but you know what all the hang-ups are for it. And how many of you have had a road trip you regret? Anybody like that? Raise your hand if you've had a road trip you regret. And the rest of you are lying, all right? Because I can tell you that there's been at least one of those, even if it's just a short trip, it's like, why did we even do this? And I got to tell you, I have several of those in my life where I just am like, why did we do this? Why did we even get in the car? This was a mistake from the beginning. But then again, you learn so many things on those trips, right? And you learn things that you do. You see things, you have interactions, all of that. Well, I want you to think of it and go back at the beginning of this series and when we started. And if this is your first day, then you're still going to get a good glimpse of the whole thing. But we've been building up to this day for all month. I mean, the whole month of January, we've been building toward this day to remind us that faith is a journey, not a destination. The destination that we would even consider as followers of Christ or people who want to, say, that's who my faith and trust is in. The final destination is heaven, all right? And I'm not in any way saying that we even reach anything close to that here on this earth. Matter of fact, it's not even near. If you can just in your mind imagine all the things that you go through that is just stupid and junk and everything, imagine it not being that way, all right? And then imagine being and doing exactly what you were meant to do with your life. You were meant to do this. It was the purpose of your life, and everything was just wiped away. All of the worry, all of the concern, all of the things that tempt you, that would be the final destination, all right? But we're not here to talk about that final destination. We're talking about the journey we're on right now, the journey that we're going to. And I want to tell you that on that journey, we all go through stages on that journey. Every one of us at stages, and we've talked about some of these. We've talked about people who are exploring their faith and people who are building their faith, people who are owning their faith, people that go through wildernesses. And then really where we're at today is talking about what it means to thrive. What does it really mean to thrive in our faith? And that's what we hope and pray for everyone. Matter of fact, I think about it from a standpoint of what it would be like for us if we could really, really see it for what it's worth. But, thinking that faith is a journey, its spiritual growth is not linear. It's not this, start here and then you take this one big giant step the next way and then this one big giant step the next way. Because what happens? On that linear path that we all wish we could be on, and whether you're of the engineering mindset or you are a very free thinker, you still like steps to be known and clear and very easy to follow, right? But life doesn't do that. Life is very different. Life will throw you a curve and a detour. There'll be lots of potholes in the road. There will be lots of things that can trip you up. And so it's not really as linear as we would like to think it is. And sometimes even in church, and when I talk about how the church is organized, sometimes we do things that are very linear based. Go to this and you'll be just fine. But quite honestly, that's not how it works. It really isn't like that at all. It's very fluid. And things happen to us. And we can be doing that linear process really well, going through the steps and feeling like we're there. And then something in life throws us that curve, and it just, we've based it all on this linear progress we make, and then we just don't. It's like, what do we do now? It's stopped me dead in my tracks. I feel like I'm going backwards. You might even feel like every time you try to go forward, it's like you bounce back. Like you hit a wall. How do I do this? What do I do? Well, today we want to really try to make that. And I know that a lot of us in this room, maybe, and even watching, you might say, I know I'm thriving. And I do believe, I believe there are people who are thriving. I'm glad for that. That's fantastic. The problem is that we can actually get to a point that we think that's the right answer that we need to be giving, even to ourselves. And we think we're doing just fine, and we find out I'm not thriving as much as I thought. And what really happens is it's because when those curves and bumps and detours and potholes and everything on the journey come along in our life, we're like, I don't know if I'll ever get this. And we actually sometimes come to a point of just deconstructing our faith completely. And if you're there, if you've been there, if it's happened to you already, or you're feeling like you're headed into that kind of a thing right now, I want to make sure that we understand some things. So I have a passage of Scripture written by the half-brother of Jesus, James. And he actually gave us this. And honestly, if you read this part of the verse, it should make your skin crawl a bit. It actually ought to make you second guess whether or not you really want to be a Jesus follower if you just read this part. Look at this. Consider it pure joy. Pure joy. Ever experienced pure joy? Wow, it's just fantastic. This is wonderful. This is the most joyful thing you can be. That's really what it's saying. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. What? I mean, honestly, I look at that and I think to myself, you've got to be kidding me. If this was all I knew of these verses, and there's more to it, don't worry, I'll get there, but I think we got to stop here a second. How is it joyful to go through loss or pain? How is it joyful to experience just a dead end in your life? How is it joyful to experience a broken relationship? How is it joy to lose money or to see your health go down and decline? How is it joyful to watch a family member that you love and maybe even your children or grandchildren, to watch them make decisions and choices that are taking them down a very destructive path. How is that joy? How is that joy? I don't get it. If I read it just this way, I don't get it. You know what this is? It describes the stage of the faith journey that we've been talking about that can happen to us at any point along. It's called a wilderness. And a wilderness is that stage when we find ourselves in circumstances caused by loss or crisis. It's that time when we have a life or faith crisis or chaos comes into our life and we don't know what to do with it. It's a loss of certainties. We're confronted by past wounds and kind of that idea of who we are and how strong we are until we meet something that's huge in our way. That's exactly what James was talking about. That's exactly what James was talking about, this trial. That should be joyful, he says. Consider it to be joy. We see God in a different light. Maybe we don't even like to see it this way. Maybe we don't want to see Him that way. We want to see Him as a God who paints and kind of goes before us. You know, they make a lot of jokes about the helicopter and lawnmower parents. You know what I'm talking about, right? Lawnmower parents are the ones that go out in front of their kids and cut everything down so that their kids have no problems or difficulties. They do everything they can to make life smooth and easy for them. We kind of want God to be a helicopter or lawnmower parent in our life. God, I don't want to go through these tough things. I don't want to have to suffer. I don't want to have to go through something that's definitely not joyful. It uncovers our deepest secrets and fears and wounds. It gives you a feeling of being stuck in the muck. You maybe even are at a point to where it brings about guilt and shame in your life for something maybe you thought caused this. Or, you know, you're even struggling with the idea, well, fine, this must have been ordained in time for this to happen to me. And we get a cynical attitude even about that concept. We get consumed by self-assessment. It immobilizes us, and we have a hard time letting God's will be our will. Now, I know I'm not the only one that says I don't like wildernesses. If you like them, then there's something probably wrong. Nobody likes them. But James said to count them joy. Count them joy when you go through a wilderness. When you encounter a trial that's out of your control, he says, count it joy. All right, God bless you. Have a great day. See, that would be bad if I did that, right? I mean, because that's not where it ends. Thank God it doesn't end there, okay? Because if it did, there wouldn't be a lot of hope this morning. You know, there'd be nothing to get loud about, okay? I want to take you to the next part of that verse, and this is what it says. You can count it joy because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. I don't know if I know that. What? Yeah, I don't know that I know that. There has to be something that gets me to a point that I can say, okay, I can be joyful about this problem, this wilderness in my life. I can be joyful about it if I know that the testing of my faith is going to produce perseverance. If I know that for sure, and the only way that happens is how? If I actually go through it and I observe and I watch and I listen long enough. It takes a person to be a bit brave and a bit courageous to actually think about it a little bit this way, to when you go through something, okay, God, I'm with you in this. Okay, God, I'm with you. Will you show me that it's going to produce something good? Perseverance. We all know what perseverance is, right? Sticking it out. Sticking it out, making it through. Getting to the other side of the wilderness and saying, okay, I can see what God did there. I can see that this journey through the wilderness was curvy and it was full of issues and problems, but I could get on the other side of it. I will say that Christians, people who maybe have been in the faith a long time, they don't want to admit this, especially if we're talking to people who are skeptical about their faith. We don't like talking about this. We don't like having to say that these kind of things happen. And it should be something that is a part of our open dialogue and honest dialogue as followers of Jesus, all of us together. That's what makes us safe for people to come, is if we just say, yeah, these things happen. This is where it's at. But the history we have and the remembering of how God brings us through, that's what takes us from point A to point B, gets us through it, and we have something to go back and say, look what God did. That's what James is trying to get across. You see, around here we use language like this, that God uses certain things in our life. We talked about them, practical teaching and providential relationships and private disciplines, all these things that God uses, personal ministry. But the one that's hardest is that God uses pivotal circumstances to build our faith. He uses these pivotal circumstances to build our faith, and that's difficult for us. Sometimes it's difficult to understand it. But I want to take you back to the verse and the verses and how James wraps this up and how he starts to make it clear. Remember, you may not know this, but he is like speaking to a group of people that were going through struggles and trials and were facing big things. I mean, they couldn't just openly profess Jesus without some kind of torture or perhaps suffering that would come in and being treated adversely because of the fact that they were following Jesus. This is what he says. If it produces perseverance, then let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. See, the idea of what it is to thrive is defined right here in this verse. Notice, to thrive, though, you have to be able to go through setbacks. You have to be able to go through a wilderness. You have to be able to do those things. And on the other side of it, and during it, all of that time, thriving is what gets you through. Thriving is what connects you to God, connects you to Jesus. And you can try to do it on your own. We can try our best. And I'll just tell you, I know how that feels. My first impulse is to go and to take the reins of the situation and try to fix it. Ever tried to fix the situation and didn't do very well with it? I've been there. I know exactly what that does. And he tells me that I can be mature and complete. And if you think you're mature, you might say, yes, I'm mature. I know that there's 66 books in the Bible. I know that I know the Pentateuch is the first 5, and we start using bits of information that we know or have collected about the Bible as things that tell us we're mature. Maturity is how we take what we know of the Bible, as much as we know, whether it's little or a lot, and we actually apply it, and it transforms us so that when we face a wilderness, it changes us. It allows us to grow deeper, and we realize, you know what? This isn't about me. This is all about God and what God is doing in my life. And complete, having everything you need, having everything that you would want at your access. And if you've never thought of it this way, hopefully you've thought of it this way. But if you're new to the faith, you're exploring your faith right now, you're exploring whether you're going to believe and follow and trust, or you're just at that building stage and you're building those things that are important to know. Know this, that the God of the universe wants to be involved in your life personally because He made you. He knows everything about you, and He wants to guide you through this life, and He wants to complete you. He wants to give you everything. And I love this last phrase. Thriving means that you're not lacking anything. That makes sense? Not lacking anything, that means you wouldn't be ill prepared for any situation or circumstance that came up in your life. You would not go back and say, I don't know how I could have made it through if it had not been for God in my life. That's thriving. That's not lacking anything. I'll tell you what thriving is. Let me give you a really point-by-point definition. When your life is reflecting Jesus, that's thriving. When you have a sense of God's acceptance, that's thriving. You know that God accepts you for who you are, right where you are. Thriving is when you gain wisdom from struggles. Thriving is when your faith is calm and steady regardless of the circumstances. Thriving is when you do everything to worship God. In other words, every part of your life. You don't segment your Christianity or your following of Jesus into some other, all these things, and you just pull it out once a week to acknowledge God in your life. Yeah, I'll go and be a part of the service today. I'm going to go and do that. But if that's all there is, every part of your life can be an act of worship. That's thriving. And when you live compassionately for others, that's what thriving is. You're not doing anything for your own gain. You're not trying to get something out of it. Look at what James says. I take you back to the verse, and it says, "Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." That finishing of the work is bringing about the changes in us, bringing about those changes that need to happen. And at every level, every stage of this journey that we go on, we gain things from each one. As we explore, we're curious about God. We should never give up that curiosity, wanting to know more about Him. So why do we explore? So we can thrive more. And then the building stage is where we grow and we get the understanding, and we begin to understand who He is, and we learn more of the Scriptures, and we start to apply those to our lives, and we should never, ever not do that. That should always be part of our life. Why do we build? So we'll thrive more. And then we own and we step up and we say, I want to be involved. I want to involve myself of what I'm learning to serve and to be useful to the group of believers, the group of followers of Jesus that have assembled. I want to do what I can there. I want to join in on that mission and vision of what God has given this group, the church. I want to be part of that. That's owning. Why do we own? So that we'll thrive more. And then when we hit these wildernesses and we don't know where we're going to go or what we're going to do, why do we have those wildernesses in our life? Because we'll thrive more. You see, it all leads. We learn something from each one of those stages that we keep with us. But thriving is the stage when we reflect Jesus in our lives, producing a steady faith, feeling a peace in our circumstances, demonstrated by the sacrificing compassion for others and having a security that God accepts me and has an eternal purpose for me. That's what thriving's all about. This is why I want Jesus to be my Lord. That's why I want Him to be my leader, because if He's the one leading me, then I can make it through this journey. That's the only way. I look at this and I think of how much it is, how important this statement is. Thriving is not arriving. Thriving's not arriving. Just because you may feel that you're there. You see, Christ-like living in total obedience to God and a detachment from things and stress and all of that can lead us to a point of thriving in our lives. But we can actually begin to get a sense of, oh, look at me, I'm thriving. And then it becomes more about us than it does God. We actually get a false sense of security, not because of what God's doing, but because of what we're doing. We feel like, oh yeah, I'm thriving. That's why it's real easy for any of us in this room to say, yeah, I'm thriving. I'm doing good. I've been going to church my whole life. Of course I'm thriving. I've been serving here at this church for years, 10 years plus. Of course I'm thriving. I make meals for people when they're sick. Of course I'm thriving. Thriving is so much more than just those simple things that we do, that we place in our life. Thriving has to be much more than that. And some people, you get to a point of thriving in your life, some people will say you're wasting your life and your time. You know those people who are skeptical of the faith and they're skeptical of who Jesus is, but they see you really thriving and wanting to do it. And you imagine, and then they come to you and they just think you're wasting your life. You have no interest in the things that are important anymore. You got to be careful because thriving's not arriving. It's not arriving. I want to remind you of this. Faith is a journey, not a destination. And we're all at these stages. These next few minutes, I want to go back and I want to show you these stages again. I want to make sure that it's clear, and I want you to see it. And I'm going to ask you to do something. It's going to take some courage on your part, and I'm asking you to be brave about this, and to do something that I'm doing too. I'm asking anybody and everybody that's here today, I don't care who you are, what your age is, this is important. And if you're watching, I'm asking you to please do this. This isn't about us counting numbers of things. This is about us giving you a practical next step that will help you go from a place of where you are currently to thriving. And if you are thriving, if you truly are thriving, as described, as we've talked about it here, if you truly are thriving, then it will help you help other people. Matter of fact, that would be the definition or the line drawn. If you're thriving, it isn't about you, and you're already in the process. Someone who is thriving in their faith is helping someone else who needs to thrive. They may be at any one of the stages, but you're helping someone. That's how you define thriving. So I want you to consider this, and I ask you to have your device ready, okay? And so as we go through this, there's going to be a number at the top of each one of the slides, and it will give you a number and a word to text. A number to text it to, and a word to put in the text body, okay? And I'm going to encourage you to do this. I'm going to ask you, please do this. Because it isn't, again, like I said, to check up on everyone individually. We won't even know that. We're not doing that kind of research. We're giving you the opportunity to anonymously just text in, but that you will receive a text back that will give you information about something to do, another step. And that's why we want this to be practical for you. And you might say, I don't do texting. I still have a flip phone, or my phone is still hooked up at home with a wire. That's fine. That's fine. I'm going to encourage you that you speak to someone and let them know what we can do and make us aware of how we might be able to help you with that next step that you find yourself in. I want to start with that first stage of spiritual growth, and it's called exploring. When we explore, it's the stage when we're curious and have an emptiness and desire for great meaning in life. As you see, if this is definitely you as I describe it, then I'm going to encourage you to text the word explore to that number. We're at this stage wanting to discover God. We have questions. We have more questions than we have answers. But you have to be careful, because when you're exploring, you can get stuck here by letting your past experiences be a barrier. You may think you need to get your life together first before God will accept you or want you in. And that's really not true, because if that were really true, none of us should be here today. Every one of us are accepted by God. He wants us to be in relationship with Him, and so He'll do anything for us. And so if it were true, none of us would be here. I want to encourage you that if you're exploring your faith, you definitely want to find God. You have this curiosity. You know, you've been here. We as a church, we plan this because we want there to be people who are exploring. I hope the rest of us in this group here are like, yeah, we want people who are exploring to be here. We want people who are exploring to be watching. And we want to help you take that step as God works in your life. And you're going to know because you have a sense of need. Do you have a need for that? Do you need to take a next step? I would encourage you. Text the word explore to that number. And then the stage of building. You know, if you're exploring, that's that beginning part, and everybody explores at some point, even if you're saying, I don't believe in God. But when you've come across that point to say, yeah, I believe in God, I believe He exists, I believe He's real, then you take that one step where you're wanting to build, and you're wanting to build your faith and learn more and to understand why it's so important. You're hungry for information. You're looking for belonging and security in your faith. You have to be careful because you can get stuck here. You can get stuck here when you're accumulating information without transformation. You can spend time going to groups and classes. You can spend time even reading on your own and studying. But if you're only doing it to accumulate the information, that's not really what's going to lead you to thriving. That information has to change you. And so you have to be careful not to get stuck there. And I must say that you have to be careful of putting your trust in a belief system or a particular leader, because that can really lock down your faith and actually send you into a wilderness. I will say this. I've said it a few weeks in a row, and I say it again. Please don't depend on me to feed you, give you every meal you need spiritually. You need to build your faith yourself. You need to own it yourself. You need to take it in and make it real. You see, when I stand here on a Sunday morning, I speak to everybody at every stage. And I'm not going to speak to just builders. And I'm not going to just speak to thrivers. I'm going to speak to everyone because that's what I'm called to do. That's what I have to do. That's what the church should be doing. And so don't think that you can tie your growth to my teaching on a Sunday morning. I hope it helps you, and I hope it encourages you to keep going, but don't depend on me to be the one, okay? You need to learn to feed yourself and to grow and to do that. Building is important, but don't get stuck there. I'll just tell you, there can be things that can get you stuck in places like that. Stale faith traditions. Things like, if you're counting on church membership, if you came in and I became a member of this church, I'll just tell you, they're not going to ask you that when you get to heaven. That's not going to be on a list of things that you had to check a box and say, yeah, I'm a member of that church. Honestly, it can actually give you a false sense of being involved. It can give you a false sense of growth and thriving. Because I'm a church member, I must be thriving, right? Those old stale faith traditions that are hanging out there. And then there's the stage of owning. And again, I'm encouraging you as you see these numbers here that you're texting which one you think you're there. And we'll give you a chance to go back and look at them again. You might say, I need to see them all first. Okay, don't worry. I'm going to give you that opportunity. But owning is that stage when we begin doing for God on what we have learned. It's going from receiving to giving. And you can get stuck here. I mean, it's possible. But at this stage, you're looking for belonging and fulfillment. You're mostly energized by doing for God. That's what mostly energizes you. You can get stuck here when you're driven by personal ambition and ego. And you want people to see what you're doing. You want acknowledged by other people, and you really are not thinking about doing this for God. That can get you stuck there. But really, it's a time when it should energize your faith, and you begin to serve and give of yourself. You have to be careful not to let your desire for approval and acceptance drive you to make your faith more about you and less about Jesus. You know, you want it to be about who He is. It'd be very easy, and quite honestly, this is one of the ones that I struggle with personally. I can find myself going through a wilderness and then oh man, I got to get up and go to work. And you know where my job is, right? You know what my work is, right? I have an office right here in this building. And my work is supposed to be about you. My work is supposed to be about who we are as a church and what we do. But I can tell you that I'm human, and when I go through a wilderness, I'm sometimes bouncing back into this stage of just owning and doing it because I have to. If I want to thrive, I can't have my eyes on me. I really can't have my eyes on you. I have to have my eyes on Him. So you see how serious this can be? It can affect any of us. And I'll just tell you, a stale faith tradition when it comes to owning is you walk in the church one Sunday and the next one you're serving somewhere. You're serving in the nursery, or you're making coffee, or you're, whatever. You're doing something without making sure that you've explored, that you've built your faith. You jump into owning right away, you're really not owning. And it won't be long before you hit a wilderness and you won't be thriving. I'll just tell you, when you get to that stage of thriving, it's when you're reflecting God, you have a sense of God's acceptance, compassionate, living for other people. That's why I want to be here. I want to be here because of those things. I want you guys to see Jesus in me. And I know not all the time you do. And I know that there are times when my compassion for people is overshadowed by the difficulty and the hardness and the things that just life throws at all of us. I can just tell you this, there's a sense of calling when you're thriving. A sense of calling to the point, now listen to this is important. You are not a mother, a father, a son, a daughter, a grandparent. You are not a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a military personnel, an administrative assistant. You're not any of those things, and then a Christian who happens to be a Christian, a follower of Jesus. It should be this. If you're thriving in your faith, if you're truly thriving, then it's going to be that you are a follower of Jesus, a Christian who happens to be a mom, a dad, a husband, a wife, a son or daughter. That's what's the beginning of it. It's what puts you in place where you're serving your country, or you're serving other people, or you're building a business, or you're doing that if you're a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher. No matter what you do, if you work in landscape, if you run a bulldozer, all of those things are just who you happen to be, but you first are this follower of Jesus if you're thriving. That means when you get up in the morning and it's like, I hate my job, I don't want to go to work. Think of it from this, that God may be able to use the compassion you have for others to know that it's not about the work or the job perhaps. And those times that are tough, that may be wilderness, yes, but God gives you this thriving to be able to go and represent Him wherever you are. And then, of course, that one that we talk about, the wilderness. The wilderness is that life or faith crisis, that confronting past wounds and that false sense of who you are. And you just are at a point of rediscovering God. Something you went through. You went through a loss that was so hard, and right now you're letting that block you. You've let that become a barrier. We can do that so easy. We can make things a barrier to God because we don't want to hear what He has to say. I'll just tell you, it's tough. It's a hard one. A wilderness is one of those times when there's just a common struggle. And hear this, everybody, this is a common struggle that people have gone through for years, trying to know God and to have Him in their life in a way to where it's thriving. Even people who have yet to find Jesus or really know the truth really want a sense of thriving in their life. Everyone wants to know that. And if you know Him, you know that this is the only place that's solid that you're going to find it, right? I mean, this is the only place you're going to come to where you know you can count on what's said. Remember what James said? Remember how he gave us all of these things? I want you to take just a few seconds, and I want to put all of them up here for you. Are you at a place of exploring? Are you at a place of building? Are you at a place of owning? Are you thriving? Or wham, wow, you're in the wilderness right now. First of all, we want to be able to pray for you. We want to be able to know this, but we also want to give you some help. We want to give you a step, something that you can do, something that will be practical. So I want you to type it in on your phone right now, if you haven't already done it, 937-818-4030. Go ahead. I'm watching every one of you. Are you doing it? Okay. I want you to type it in. I want everybody to respond to this today.
Just the word, not a sentence.
Right.
Just the word.
And you don't need to type a message. All you need to do is type a word. Okay? That's all you need to do. If you type a long message, you may not get the return the way you're looking for it. And this is what you want to do. You want to just type the word. Explore, build, own, thrive, wilderness. I know it's maybe tough for some of us because you might have to admit something. But I'm going to ask you again, like I said before, to be brave, to have courage. Courage to take a step. I want to tell you, I believe this would change your life, but I believe it'll change our church if we all start to take steps. And listen, we're not going to take that word and put it by your name. All right? There won't be name tags out in the lobby next week when you come in with your name and what you typed in, okay? Won't be there. Okay? I won't know who did this. None of us will know that. But we want to help. We want to help. So we've set it up to where anonymously you type that word in and you'll get a response that gives you a next step. I hope you've done this. I hope you're doing it. I'll tell you why. Paul summed it up really well in Colossians when he was helping people thrive in their faith. That's really why he wrote to the Colossians. And I put this up here in a version of Scripture that maybe you're familiar with, the Message, but I love the way it states. And I'd almost, in a way, wish I could say these are my words to you. But these were Paul's words to that church, that group of people. He said, I want you woven into a tapestry of love, in touch with everything there is to know of God. Then you will have minds confident and at rest, focused on Christ, God's great mystery. Christ is God's great mystery. And we have the opportunity to be in a relationship with Him that's thriving. And it's as a church, what we want is to lead people to a thriving relationship with Jesus Christ. And then it goes on, all the richest treasures of wisdom and knowledge are embedded in that mystery, Christ. It's all embedded in Jesus and knowing Him, and nowhere else. You hear that? If you're trying to do it on your own, or you're coming up with other plans, or if you're exploring your faith and you're wondering whether Christianity really is the truth, Paul said it here very plainly. That if you want to know and have knowledge and get through all the mysteries of life, you want to get through those wildernesses, you really want to be thriving, then the information comes from nowhere else but Jesus. I want to encourage you with three things before I finish. The first one's this. Acknowledge where you are. Where are you? Where are you on this journey? And if you know where you are, then that's a great thing. Because, it's good to be at any of those. All right? Especially if you're not stuck there. If you're exploring, then boy, pour your heart into it. Acknowledge it. Find out what you can do. Let us help you. If you're building, that's great. Build your faith. Build it. Learn the Scriptures and learn the time to spend with Him. That's important. And then if you're owning it, that's fantastic because you're pouring in and you're serving. But make sure it's about Jesus and not about you. If you're at a time of wilderness, I want to tell you that He'll be there to take you through it. And you shouldn't go through it alone. I want to tell you that you've got to do this too. You not only acknowledge it, but you've got to open your heart and mind to going forward. Some of you did not text a word today. Some of you have heard what I've said, and you thought, I don't trust anybody to do this. Okay, that's between you and God. Why don't you tell God where you are? Because you know what? He already knows. So maybe opening your heart and mind to going forward. I don't want to be stuck here. I want to move on. I want to grow in my faith. I want this journey to be incredible. I feel like I'm stuck. Don't stay stuck, okay? It's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to just stay that way. And then the last one is don't try to get there alone. That's why we're offering this today. That's why this is important. An opportunity for you to step in the right direction and let us help you. I say this from my heart. I love you. And I want to hear stories of God bringing about unbelievable things in your life and bringing you to a point of thriving.